Hello and welcome back to another episode of Great American Underdog, where you can hear stories of strength and success from real life underdogs. I'm thrilled to welcome an inspiring guest to the Great American Underdog podcast today. He is the founder of Lighthouse Church, a faith-filled community in Brooklyn, New York, that he started at the young age of 24 years old. Outside of his ministry, he is a devoted husband and father, which further fuels his calling to lead and inspire others. He is here to share his stories, lessons, and his visions for creating a lasting impact in his community and in others' lives. I am honored to welcome Frank Lucenti. Frank, how are you, my man?
Yo. Hello, everyone. Hello, Ron. Glad to be here today.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you. And just so the audience knows, this is such a cool full circle moment too, just because we grew up together. We know each other since we're kids. And to come back to be able to do this and share Lighthouse's story and your story, Frank, is a blessing and an honor, man. So grateful to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. And you don't know this, Ron, but just going back to childhood, you are the person that taught me how to tie my shoes, man.
Are you
So
serious?
I'm 100% serious.
Oh
You
my
taught me
goodness.
I couldn't tie them for so long, and then you just showed me the way, and that stuck with me forever, man.
Wow. Wow. I'm so
Yep.
honored to know that I'm that
Fine.
person. I don't think I've ever had somebody tell me that I've taught them how to tie their shoes like
The
all these
first of
years later.
everything, man. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I want to get into your story today, Frank, for sure, and I appreciate you just sharing that with me because that's a cool moment. Talk to me a little bit about early days, your upbringing, and any experiences that you feel shaped your journey up to this point.
Yeah, totally. And if I'm beginning to ramble, as a pastor does, just feel free to cut me off
No worries,
and
man.
take that from me. But if you grew up in Brooklyn, and just mostly if you grew up Italian, you grew up Catholic. It was just in your DNA. It's like an ethnicity, I want to say. It's in your blood. And I remember just being in confirmation, going to the religion classes, and at one point I just knew if if this Bible is so important, if it's what everyone's making it what it is, if it's the word of God, I need to start reading this thing. And I started reading it, and it just I wasn't seeing what it says in the book be done, or just being applied the way it says it should be applied. So I started asking questions. I started being a little rebel, and the rest is kind of history. I would ask the deacons and the bishops. I'd say, "Hey, the Bible says that you're supposed to be married. Why aren't you married?" And they kind of shushed me, and they didn't like that I was reading. They didn't like I was asking questions, and from there, just kind of like gave me that red flag where I was like, I think it's time to study this book. I think it's time to know this thing. So I was like maybe 12 or 13, street kid, grew up in Brooklyn, and just the Lord got like I just felt God calling me in my life. God kind of like doing a work in my life from that young age, and went to Bible college, got married, all that stuff. Started a church at 24, and it's been a good journey. It's been a rough journey. There's been bumps, there's been huddles, there's been mountains, but
What was
God really.
I'm gonna do my first cutoff for you here, bro,
Yeah, yeah.
because I want to unpack what you just said because there's so many lessons and things that the audience can definitely learn from your journey, man. So those first early days, you went up to the deacons, you said, "Hey, we're supposed to be married. What gives? Like, why are you not married?" That's a good question to ask. As a 12, 13 year old, because you're
Wow.
learning, you've deep dived, into the Bible and things like that at this point. And the other thing too is a lot of other 12, 13 year olds might not take that same path to make it part of their life where they're going to give back and then feel like they want to go to Bible college and then open a church. So like, what was the defining moments for you that said that going this route was going to be your life's path? Was there anything that happened in your younger years that caused you to set and turn to God and say, this is how I want to serve other people?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little like spiritual. I remember just being at like this service, and at the end of the service, just this person kind of gave this call to action. I felt God call me, and as I got deeper into Bible college and being around other pastors, that's actually a thing. Being a pastor, being someone who teaches the word, being someone who helps others, serves others. It's a calling. And I felt that as a young kid, like God just kind of like saying, I'm calling you to do this. And it kind of confirms itself to be true, because if it wasn't him, it would not have carried out to this. I wouldn't have gotten through everything that I had to get through. I would have given up. So it's definitely a calling. And I think part of it's being a Brooklyn kid. We kind of call out BS right away. Like if you're telling me I need to follow this book, and then you're doing things that are different, I'm from Brooklyn, man. I'm gonna question you. I'm gonna challenge you. What are you talking about? This is off. I remember growing up and just hearing like these born again people, they're crazies. Don't mention being born again. That's weird. And I remember just opening this Bible, and Jesus says you must be born again to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So I just remember being like, you guys, what's happening? I had to figure it out. That was in me, instilled in me as a young kid. I have to figure it out for myself. If I'm not being told this important stuff, I got to make my way.
What was some of, like, I guess, the harder times that continue to instill your faith in God and push you down that road, Frank?
Growing up in Brooklyn kind of already has that hard lifestyle. You're introduced to just everything at a young age. There's drugs around, there's people overdosing. You see it all very young. And I did happen to lose my sister to drug overdose. So it's not just like something I know of, it's in my life, it's in my family. I've seen it. And things like that, when they take place, what do you do? And that's not just in my situation. Brooklyn, I think the population is like 2 point something million people, and that's just in Brooklyn. Um, there's a lot of people here, and I would say the majority are struggling in drugs, in addiction, and the city does a pretty terrible job. So I remember like going with my sister to they call it like a methadone clinic, I believe, a methadone clinic. Yeah, yeah. And just seeing how many people were lost. Like you have the city, they have doctors, I guess, where they're putting these drugs in people's mouths. Like you go up to this window, it's all city provided, and they just put methadone one by one. They take it every day, and it's like they're keeping people on drugs. My sister on methadone was a scary thing to see. Um, they say it helps, but nothing helped. I've lost friends to overdoses, and just seeing that situation was kind of life altering, and I had to do something about it. Part of me believes that's what the church's job is. So the church isn't a building, but being a part of a church, the church gets in the way of that. The church can step in and impact lives. Being a part of a church or having a community in neighborhoods like this could actually do something rather than just see the cycle repeat for so many people.
Yeah, and the other thing too is who's in the church, right? Because at the end of the
Yeah,
day, whether it's faith or even business, you could I'll use a weird parallel, but you could walk into a car dealership and work with a salesperson that really doesn't care about your end results or your
yeah,
current pain points. Or you could walk into a dealership and you have somebody who's asking you questions, trying to dig a little bit deeper, find out a little bit more about why you're here and how can I help you achieve whatever end result you are looking to achieve,
yeah,
whether it's buy a car from me or somebody else. I'm just here to coach you and educate you and help guide you through your journey. And when you're in business, that's an effective selling professional. I don't care what industry you are, you're there to guide other people. And you could walk into a church, I would assume, and sometimes you're not going to connect with the people that are sharing the sermon or that you're speaking with, whether you're doing confession or whatever the case is, right? So the people becomes the very important element. So it sounds like,
yeah,
again, you were so empowered to help people that I think that that's part of your success in your church, because people are attracted to you and drawn to you because you have a genuine, authentic way about you, Frank, that just shines through, that people can resonate with, and definitely going through those hardships with your sister sounds like kind of molded that want to give back to your community.
yeah. No, you're 100% right. When you walk into a place, whether it's a car dealership or a church, you kind of know who's genuine right away. You can tell it's in someone, and my thing has always been what a shame it is. Whereas if the church is there, it's got to be a given. If the Holy Spirit's not in it, you know it. And my calling, like I feel like that's my purpose. I wanted to build a community or create a space for people where that exists, that genuine personality, that place where people actually care and want to make a difference. Because when you read this book and you get into this book, it's all about serving people, and I know you're all about leadership too, and that's leadership at its foundation. It's being a servant, and it's important.
So John Maxwell, do you know who that is?
Yeah, of
Yeah, so
course. Yeah.
Maxwell, the five levels of leadership, he describes leadership in one word, and it's influence.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is influencing others as a leader, and you're able to give back to the community. Like, I love your tagline, finding hope and building community. So, you're leading people to find hope, where maybe hope is lost, and show them that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel through God. And there's ways that you could go about making real life changes, by, again, that source of community and helping people find hope. So, how do those values for you really shape the mission of Lighthouse?
And I feel like they're still shaping the mission. I feel like I'm still trying to get it down. But it's like not only does it shape us, but it has to be us, and it's so easy to fall out of that. I know something that Maxwell says too is he's big on integrity, um, doing the right thing, like when no one's looking, and that's important. And none of us are perfect. We're all learning. We're all growing, but doing our best to apply these things daily makes the difference. It shapes who we are. The more that we at least attempt to do these things, and that's what I want to be about. When we first started the church, not only was I starting it, but I was also like I wasn't a full-time pastor at the time, so I was working full-time in the school, which kinda connects to a that was a whole hurdle in itself, being a full-time teacher, in the city, with special education, students with disabilities. So doing that full-time plus pastoring full-time was insanity.
Yeah, Frank, how did you do that? Like, you were at 24 years
Oh,
old, you
man.
start Lighthouse, man. Like, so how do
Yeah,
you for the people in the audience who might be working multiple projects, right? Like, they're in business, they're selling, or they're working a job, and they also have a passion project like you did for the church.
yeah,
How did you balance the two? And then really,
man.
how did you overcome the logistics and things to actually get that structured in such a crazy place like Brooklyn?
Yeah, man. Oh, life kinda didn't exist at the time. It was the full-time pastoring, it was the full-time teaching, and then I got married young and we had babies right at the start. So while I was full-time teaching and pastoring, I had 2 children. So my daughter Leela was 1.5, my son Frankie Jr. was, like, infant, like, he was in the months. So then trying to balance family life on top of it, if you try to do it on your own, I'm telling you, you will just snap. I like the one word I could just think of off the top of my head is prayer. I would pray all the time, just understanding this is way bigger than me. Um, I know at any moment I feel like I could snap. Just taking that time, separating it, whether it's in the morning before my day starts. I'm the type who likes to write. I would just write out my prayers, and that would just set me up for a day of success.
Are you
So,
a handwriter?
yeah, I handwrite. I can't type it out.
Cool, right
Yeah,
on.
and even if my hand is killing me, I am just like crying out to the Lord, God, I cannot do this without you. You got to help me. And I'm telling you, for anyone who's listening, I don't know whatever it is you may think or believe, whatever you grew up to believe, I can tell you 100% God answers prayers. He answers prayers. He got me through it. And it does build endurance and all that stuff. Yes, you get stronger as you keep at it, but his strength, his hand is able to like kind of push you through those waves. He carries you, and I just that time in my life was insane. It really was, and I would not have made it out if it wasn't for God. He was good.
Yeah,
He was
and
good.
100%, man. And I want to
Yeah,
go back to like the writing piece.
mm,
I'm sure for you, because God is inside you and you have such a strong connection that when you're writing, like it's almost like it's coming out through the pen on paper. Am I right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for a lot of people out there, I talk about even gratitude journaling. I find that, similar in ways, not
yeah,
identical to talking to God, but similar in ways because you're still in this state of appreciation of
yeah,
what's around you and just feeling like how much you already have. Because I feel that, especially in this day and age, social media, external forces, all these things that are trying to get your attention from the outside, it can be challenging to stay positive and in a state of gratitude and know
yeah,
that God is on your side and he's there for you. So,
yeah.
how has, staying true to that vision of building Lighthouse allowed you to get over, like, I'm sure some logistical challenges and cultural challenges with actually putting together the church inside of Brooklyn?
Yeah. And there's a lot of areas that could go because there's the trying to find out the legal aspect of how to even do this in Brooklyn. There's spiritual attack. There's just the agenda that's so against the Bible. Just like in Brooklyn, a friend of mine owns a music company, and during COVID, everything was shut down. These kids were literally home all day, every day. And it's like my friend who had this business, he had his own place, wanted to start a camp just for them to come out and be a part of something like bigger. And the city came, knocked on the door, and said, if you don't call it like a music camp, this has to shut down. And you're violating the codes of the city. You're not allowed to do this. And like all the kids are having fun. They've been at home, I'm telling you, for like months and months and months. Kids are depressed. Kids are taking their lives. Kids don't know what to do. So it's like this should be seen as something amazing. And yet here comes the city, and they're like, you know what? It can't go on. And that's just insane. So we tackle that all the time. It's just the nature of the city. And my thing with this city is you just gotta keep grinding. You gotta grind against it. Gotta kinda gotta build thick skin against it and, just push back. You gotta figure out the loopholes. You gotta figure out, connections, networking, knowing people. And then even in the school, people knew me as a pastor, people knew I had a church, and then I had coworkers who were, like, teaching, 6th graders, 11-year-olds, like, you need to have certain pronouns, and you can change this, and you can be this. So it's just I feel like with Christianity or the Bible, being a man of God or a woman of God, you always have that force hitting against you because this culture is so opposite. It's a battle.
To that point, Frank, like people aren't as called anymore
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do things, and I think that
yeah,
that's because they lack inspiration and hope.
yeah,
So
definitely.
so I would assume that those are the two things you look to instill, through a lot of your different community building events, which
Yeah,
we'll get into. But why? I'm curious. Why the name Lighthouse Church? Why'd you pick
yeah.
that? How did that
And
happen?
there's only one lighthouse in South Brooklyn, and it's in Seagate, and nobody even knows about it. So when you think of Brooklyn, you don't think of lighthouses. But, just the definition of what a lighthouse is, what it does, what it's made for, this world really is in a dark state, and I think people were really opened up to it during COVID. People were able to see, at least in the city, and if you even just look at, like, the voting percentages, how much it shifted in the city is insane. I think people were opened up to seeing how crazy it's become or how blinded we are, how evil things are just right in our faces, how evil is just after our children, after young people. As a lighthouse, we are literally just trying to be a beacon of light to people who are out there, people who are lost out there. Just let's shine it up. Let's be bright, and that way, like, I'm trying to think of the phrase, but even in the darkest room, that smallest little light is the strongest light ever. So the stronger the room, the better, which is why I feel like, God did call me to Brooklyn. There are times my wife was like, "Let's move to Florida." let's just go. The prices are better, the weather, she's good with that stuff. She's like, let's just do it. But I just all the time I remind her, I have to remind myself even because how easily I could be swayed to be like, all right, let's go. God called me to be here. It's a tough spot. There's different denominations who try to plant churches in Brooklyn, and they fail. They don't work. They kind of call them plants. So it's like you get someone from some other state in their denomination. They have money, they have the resources, and they plant, and it doesn't work. So for me, being a Brooklynite, I'm born here, I'm raised here, I'm a part of this community. Uh, it God won't let me leave yet. There's work to do. So I'm pretty big on that, man.
And also, I commend you for so many things, just getting reconnected with you after all these years and paying attention to what you've been doing. But also, like, for the audience, there's so many people out there that are wondering whether or not they should take the easier path. And sometimes it feels like that is the move because going down the harder path is going to present you with obstacles and a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
So, again, would you say that, knowing that you had the mission of God and also wanting to give back to a community you grew up in, was there anything else that really uh, gave you that fortitude to continue to push forward to make Lighthouse a physical, real thing in the community?
I think the more you are participating in the world, whether it's you have a job somewhere, you're in a community, you have a family, the more you just get out into the world, the more you really see the need for 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 you to for you to participate, for you to get your hands dirty in the world, for you to just do what God called you to do, and for you it does not have to be to start a church. There could be someone who is just doing that call for you, is just serving that one person. Jesus says, "Just give a cup of water in my name." So if we all just thought like that, that's powerful. What that could do to a community is beyond even starting a church. And just to that person who's thinking, should I go for it? Should I choose the easier path? What if that harder path doesn't work out? I always say 1,000 times, I stand behind it. Go for it. Like if you put your all into something, you're sowing into it. It has to give back. There's been times even with starting this church where I had the both jobs. The church wasn't there yet to be sustainable. It was still growing in finances. There's no way it could have paid me a salary. And I remember when COVID came, I worked throughout all COVID. I was one of the only teachers in the building, and most of the teachers stood home. Most of the teachers, they taught from home as the kids went into the schools because the kids were so tired of being home. Kids changed after COVID. There's a difference in children and students, and every teacher talks about it, and it affected them. So finally, they get the chance to come back to the school. You had to stay 6 feet apart. You had to have a mask. All these rules, yada yada yada. But the teachers chose to stay home and fight because they didn't want to get COVID, and they were kind of pulling that like I'm scared for my life card. So they stood home, and the kids came in and they did their schooling from their computer, but in the classroom. And to me, like that's crazy. So I was in there. I wanted to be there with the students. That was a great time. That was like a rich time. But then just fast forward a year, 2021, COVID mandates came out. And, I know your podcast is Great American Underdog. Just like I felt like in that moment, my freedom was being stripped from me. Like they were telling me I could not work, that I will lose my job if I don't follow their mandate, if I don't get the JAB. Um, so in that moment, I stood like so many teachers, they got like, cards and whatever they did that they had to do to kind of keep it. But my integrity, man, I couldn't lie. I couldn't fake something. I cannot do it. I don't feel right doing this right now. I had co-teachers who were calling out every week sick, and they were boosted up, bro. They were 6 times boosted up. And I'm there, I'm healthy, I'm good. I don't need this thing in me. I'm here. I'm healthy. I was younger. I was a little bit more fit. It was before dad bod really took over, and I was just I stood my ground. I said, I'm going to lose my job then if that's what I have to do. And it was at a time where the church really couldn't fully sustain, but it gave me a chance to go full time. And in that moment, church paid a small salary, wasn't enough, but like I said from the beginning, God is is able. He is bigger than what we could imagine. He sustained me and my family. I'd rather have my backup, or I'd rather have my security in God than to think all of my security is in the DOE. God is much bigger than that. So being able to be in that full-time moment in 2021, the church grew. So it was hard. You have to take risks. There's gonna be moments you're like, I don't even think this is smart. But if you would just stick to the routines, if you just stick to the work that you have to do in order to make it happen, it will grow. It will definitely grow. And God kind of tested me twice with that. So after that moment, I was full time. The DOE reaches out and they say, "Hey, listen, we're inviting you back to work if you don't have the JAB." So I was like, all right, I guess I could go back to work. So I went back to teaching, and I faced a moment because the special education was it's full time. So I have friends, coworkers who they're bombarded, like they're barely making it through the day. I had a teacher with me last year. Literally, she quit like 3 months into the year, and and the worst thing you could do is compare. That's another thing. You can't compare yourself because that's gonna put you on a wrong path. But just for the sake of this, like she had no kids, like she was single, no other full-time job. So me being a father with babies, and then I'm also full-time pastoring, knowing in this moment this is insanity. I faced a moment at the end of that year. I'm either gonna continue juggling all these things at once, or I have to go all in with the church. And so I actually made that decision over the summer this year, 2024. And my principal was like, listen, you need this, stay in this. You have kids, you have a family, take the salary. You need the health benefits. And I'm telling you, it was like, this sounds so good. Like she's not wrong. But I knew in my heart, I need to go all in. I need to let go, and resigning was difficult. I'm telling you, my wife, she heard me, and I'm not perfect. Every day I would go to my wife and say, "Listen, I don't think it's a good idea. There's no such thing as some strong person. Everybody has that side of them, and if you're married, your wife knows it. You can't hide it."
Nah.
And it was every day like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna stay in the school. And that's where community is important. You really I know John Maxwell is big with having people around you, the right team. You cannot do it alone, because if I was alone, I would have went back. I had my team tell me, you need to trust God and you need to do what you said you're called to do. If you're saying you need to go full time, stop backing out on it. And I sent that email. I said, all right, I have to resign. So I've been full time again, and if you're debating, man, should I do it? If you're just do it. You will not regret it. Even if it doesn't work out, you will not regret it.
100%, man. So I have a parallel to you in a way because of entrepreneurship, right? Like I was working at an Audi dealership and I had aspirations to work for Audi corporate. I wanted to work for the manufacturer.
Wow.
And I had met my business partner in the first dealership I had ever worked at, and he came in to do a sales training. And then 4 years later, after some time with Audi and doing pretty well and establishing myself with the brand and the community and selling, he came to me and asked me to do what we're doing today, which is to be able to create a bigger impact in people's lives. And ultimately,
Wow.
I wanted to work for Audi because I wanted to be a sales trainer to be able to touch more people's lives in something that I was also passionate about. Like I knew
Wow.
that through teaching people about cars and what was coming out from the product lineup and just being encyclopedic in my knowledge that way, I could help them create better relationships, the salespeople, with their product that they're Audi with what they're selling, in order to make more deals and get better repeat and referral opportunities and really, again, foster better relationships with their clients, right? So I had to make that decision at that point to like say, hey, you know what? if I work for Audi corporate and what I had at the time, like I have a consistent paycheck, right? I have insurance,
Yep.
I have health
Yep.
insurance, I have life insurance, all these things.
Retirement. Yep.
And then I just decided that, you know what? I'm just gonna cut all of that. I'm gonna burn the
Wow.
boats and I'm gonna move forward into
Come on,
entrepreneurship
man.
and
That's insane.
go all in. And there's that point where you have to decide for yourself, like, and I think the higher calling piece in God is it comes into such play because you have to say to yourself, okay, like this is a fork in the road and also a test of, do you stay in that position of comfort, right? Like you could have stayed with the salary and the benefits and all those things, but you decided that I have a higher calling in my life to make a bigger impact in my community and I need to follow that. And it has rewarded you clearly. So I totally resonate with that. So how do you feel like the other thing I wanted to ask too is you mentioned how people can get so, I guess, like blinders on. Like you had said the Department of Education at the time, like, it's easy to get like suppressed by those kind of things and forget about the bigger picture. So for the audience out there, like how do they remind themselves that there is, like, God is on your side. There's higher power for the people that might not be Catholic. There's higher power out there that is guiding you in your life, that is telling you to continue to persist and move forward. Like how do they connect with that and remove themselves from the limiting belief of a entity or business organization or group of people might be holding them down? Like
Mm.
for you it might be easier because you've always felt that sense of God and calling
Yep.
inside of you, but what about the people that might not be as connected to that at this time?
Wow. No, that's good. I think that's the challenge all of us face. I would say even for those people, for all of us, we all worship something. Um, we were created to worship. If we're going to look at it from like a biblical standpoint, we're created to worship God, to love Him, to adore Him. The problem is we don't do that good. That's why I love the Bible. It sidetrack for just a second. That's what it teaches.
Yeah, can
That
I add something
you
to
you
that?
need help. Yeah, yeah,
What about I also feel like it teaches compassion for other people, like
yeah,
empathy. Like truly, do you agree with that?
yeah. That's the
At the
whole.
heart.
If just by reading the Gospels, that's all. The Gospels is like the story of Jesus. That's all you see in Jesus.
Right.
Compassion for people that no one has compassion for.
Mhm.
Um, we always kind of think it's the religious people. Like he went to the religious people and was very upset. He was very angry. He went into the temple where all the religious people were. It's in the Gospels. He flipped the tables, and in one Gospel it said he had a whip in his hand. So sometimes we think of Jesus as like this like soft hippie, but he's got sides to him, and
Yeah.
he is not okay, or not that he's not okay, but he calls us to be compassionate. He calls us to have empathy. That is the whole message, and it it is just it's hard to do that on our own. I don't think we have it. The
Right.
Bible teaches that we need help. The whole point, like with people who are struggling with drugs, you can't do it on your own. And sometimes we get in
No.
this mindset where it's got to be on me, and this it's not the right thinking. We need help from the outside to help us to get us out of that. And that's where it's exciting to be in our positions because now we get to sometimes be that outside person to help people out.
Even when you don't recognize it sometimes, Frank.
Yeah,
Like
and usually
I
that's what it is.
Yeah, and
It's always
I
in
think
those moments.
that happens to me sometimes with like running. Like, you never know who you're influencing. Like just from me posting my runs, I've had people come up to me that I was not expecting and say, like, you
Yep,
inspired me to go out and run and get a little bit more physically fit and you know
100%.
all those little things that add up. So like, not to get sidetracked from the question, but like how do those people, I want to get back to that. How do those people, real get to recognizing that there's something bigger out there for them and that's guiding them and that God's on their side?
It's so hard, Ron. Like this is the stuff we debate in Christianity, like in topics. Like part of me wants to say they have to get to a place, and most of us do. We always reach that place when we hit our bottom. We have to get to that place where we've hit rock bottom, where we're tired of the situation that we're in. And that's real in every situation, whether it's someone who's trying to get fit again, like myself, I'm starting over, someone who's like addicted to drugs, you can't get out of it unless you're tired of being in that position. You have to really be sick and tired, or just you want a different result. If you want a different outcome, you have to get to that point where you realize the place I'm in is not going to get me there. And that's one part of it. And the second part of it, the thing that we debate, or the thing that the Bible kind of does make clear, is there's also times where kind of God opens your eyes. Jesus said a couple times, these religious people, they had blinders on their eyes. Now, was it God or was it themselves? There's a bit of both in that. Sometimes we blind ourselves. But the second part of it is that idea of, I do believe God isn't just calling me. There's so many people where God is calling them. They just gotta open their ear to it. They're looking from the wrong lens, and you mentioned gratitude earlier. Gratitude is so important. The Bible in the New Testament teaches time and time again when you're praying to pray with thanksgiving. I preached a sermon on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. It was all about how good it felt to be thankful and how it doesn't need to be once a year. A lot of us felt so good on Thanksgiving going around, it feels good. It does something in here, it's a mindset, and imagine if we did that throughout the whole year. And I think for people who are just stuck or they're lost, they need that new mindset. So part of it is you getting that new mindset, a part of it is you applying these things and thinking differently and getting into learning these things, and learning from people like John Maxwell and other writers. But I really believe that's like the second part of it. The bigger piece of it is you really need like a heart change. And what's so special about God is he does that heart change. Like if you think about transformations, like yes, there's the Biggest Loser transformation where you got to put in the work. But Ron, you've known me since I'm a kid, and you've seen me as a kid. There's been a natural transformation that happens from being a child. You grow up, that happens on its own. And there's times in life where God wants to do a transformation in you. It's his hands, it's his work. And you gotta just let it happen. So that's a heart change. That saying of being born again, after Jesus says that, it's the most famous Bible verse. You'll see like players have like John 3:16, but the saying is true. Like God so loved the world that he gave his only son. So for those people who are just stuck and they feel like I don't have that calling, Frank, I don't have what you have. The Bible says that God loved you so much. You have that calling. God loves you. He created you. You're his child. So when you start to receive that, a child doesn't have to work for my daughter Leela will never have to earn my love. I love that girl as soon as she came out. And congrats to your sister. I saw she just had a baby.
Oh,
When you
thanks,
hold
man.
that baby, and when you hold the baby, that baby, even for you as an uncle, doesn't have to earn your love.
No,
You come
never.
in that room, you're sobbing, you're like, she's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
abundance of love right
you
out of the
love
gate.
that child. And sometimes we confuse God with this like finger sticking God up in heaven. And the Bible teaches a lot different, especially when Jesus speaks. He's a father. He loves, and he's making a way for us to kind of come back. He's called all of us. So to you, if you're feeling like, man, I don't have that calling, God has called you. He loves you so much that he sent his only son to die for you, to bring you back to him. That's a story of love. That's what Christmas is all about. It's a story of love. So it's there for everybody who wants it. It's there.
And sacrifice too, right? Like, you don't get without giving. And
Yeah.
when you give to get and it's not genuine, you still don't get.
Yep.
And when you actually give and it's genuine, then you have a shot at getting. And
Yeah.
a lot of times I think people that are a little bit lost, they're, you know, with their hand out a lot of times rather than
Of
how
course.
can I come and add value, and
Yeah.
sometimes make a sacrifice in order to show somebody like I'm here for it. So, if If you're somebody that's, unemployed, for example, like, you're going to have to maybe do something that you didn't do before to get a new outcome, and actually go for it,
Yeah,
and make a difference. So the other thing that you said earlier that I think is a part of what we're talking about is finding the right people. Like you said before, nobody does anything alone.
yeah,
So
or
how important, like, for example, I know that, inside of the community building elements of the church, you host a men's gathering and a Friday night teen service. What have you learned about creating those meaningful spaces for people to connect, and learn from each other?
yeah, it's what everybody craves. We need community. We cannot thrive in this walk alone. When you were talking about that genuine giving, I thought of Eric Thomas. He's been like mentioning this in his podcast lately. How many people are trying? They're trying to make connections so bad, but it's always to get something out of it. And he's right now like that's been his thing. Like you gotta just give it. You gotta stop with that mindset because the truth and I know I think Eric Thomas, not Eric Thomas, John Maxwell does say this, but like empowering others, um, building up others, and building teams is like the heart of leadership. You need to build people up. You have, and that because that's what it is. We're all wanting that space. We are all needing that outside help. Otherwise, we get stuck in our way. So that's what I'm trying to be all about. It's hard because the moment you start working with people, everyone's flawed. Even as a pastor, I always heard my professor say, "You're going to be hated. People are going to talk smack. People that you're like caring for are going to say A, B, C, D." And oh my goodness, were they right? Like that stuff is a part of it. You're going to be criticized. People are going to say, "Oh, you should be doing it this way. I don't know why he's doing it." It's a part of it. But in the long run, if you don't have that team surrounding you, like those other voices will just like I'll just talk for myself. Those other voices get to me. And if I'm not building my team and I'm not pouring into like the people that are around me, I could easily fall. My endurance is shortened. Like the way that you could run a marathon, bro. I can't imagine like the endurance that takes to have to get to that last mile.
So your
Um,
fuel is the people.
yeah,
Like you
and
get
totally,
ignited by your interactions with the people that you're
yeah,
serving, and also growing with at the same time, because we're all on the journey, right?
yeah, yeah. And if you're not fueling them, sometimes you could develop yourself a community of people who will leech off of you or suck the life out of you. And as a leader, whatever if you have a team of salesmen, if you have a team of people at Costco, if you have a team wherever it is, everyone can kind of tell what kind of leader you are. It's how they can see it in how you work. They see it in how you put your time in with people. So it's important. If you do a crappy job of it, you're going to get a crappy job back from the people around you. And it's really true. So empowering others as a leader is detrimental. In every single DOE, like every DOE school, the conversation in the teachers' lounge is how bad the leadership is. If the leadership was blah 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 blah, but it's true. Everything stems from leadership, and you have to be pouring into your people. Otherwise, it turns on you. It crumbles from the inside.
Yeah, and also you're as a leader, at some point, Frank, there's going to be a time, if you haven't already identified someone who might be doing what you're doing right now or do it
Oh,
alongside you.
oh yeah,
So, like, in your ongoings throughout your day, when you're interacting with, the different groups of people that you're serving, you're also looking for people that are standouts, in
yeah,
terms of, like, you could see when something about somebody's energy makes other people gravitate to them.
yeah.
Like Nikki, my wife, says that about me a lot, and I could probably say the same about you just from the short time of knowing you as an adult, and watching you. Like, people gravitate to you because there's a genuine, authentic approach that you have
Mm.
to speaking with people. Talk to me a little bit about, like, or can you share a story from the community that is your favorite so far? Like, that you've had a significant impact in somebody's journey that you like to share?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, there's so many, man. Um, man, oh man,
I know there's probably a
there's
lot.
so many. Yeah, throughout the years too. Um, I think I always go back to I'll say 2, there's a younger there's a lot of young people that I've been helping. So we have a teen service every single Friday night. We've been doing that since 2021. And before that, so, like, that's when it became official. That's kinda how we get our space. We lead these teams. We get, like, average 20 to 25 teens every Friday night.
Awesome.
But that's, like, when it became official. I've been doing that, though, since I'm, like, 17. So, I've seen, like, many, like, the ones from the beginning, they're all old now, and, but it's like when you see those younger ones step into their calling. So, like, there's a young man right now, he's signed up, he's going to Bible college in, like, 3, 4 weeks. So he feels that calling, he wants to invest into young people, he's going in to be a youth pastor, that's, like, happening. So to be able to see that in his life, and this is a kid who has no father, his dad left him when he was a baby, was never invested into his life, his his home is broken, he lives in the projects, was just given the worst plate, and it's not even his fault. And yet to see God, some people will say, look at that. See that situation? It's a mess. This whole world, Ron, is a mess. And that can't be what we focus on. The focus is the fact that God is able to make something beautiful out of the messes of the world. It's not that God caused the mess. It's that, yo, we as people stink. Sometimes we just don't want to accept that. Um, that's kind of that's the first teaching of the Bible is that it teaches, yo, we are not good. We need to be taught how to be good. And some people like cringe at that. But listen, like my daughter Leela, I didn't have to teach her to lie. I had to teach my daughter, who's 3, that lying is not good because it's just in us. Um, but God is able to restore that. He's able to fix the mess. He's able to do something beautiful out of a life, out of that young kid. And it's just there's been many situations like that where God redeems, God restores that. So that's a young person, and then God just did that in an older gentleman, a guy who's way older than me, someone that he gave me an opportunity to speak, and he kind of called me in to preach at a nursing home, and he was kind of mentoring me there and helping me there. That's like when I first started. We disconnected for years because of COVID, and then just how life there's circles in life, man. It's like full circles that come around. He's a associate pastor at the church now, so we put him on full staff, I think last year, and just to see how God, you could be 70 years old and you just that purpose, like now you're at your like peak, like more than you were in your 50s or 40s. God is giving people that purpose daily. So that's exciting. That's what makes me love what I do, is just seeing how there's so many different people, there's so many different ages, there's so many different situations where God works. There's one girl, last one, this one girl, she came to us in the church. She was like maybe 13, 14. Her mom didn't come to church. Her mom was like heavily not in the right place. And this girl, Kiara, was just like praying and like coming out and serving God and trusting God. Eventually her mom came into church, and like God just did a whole work in that family. And she just applied to go to Bible school. She got in September, and it was hard because she really wanted to go. It's expensive, and we said, listen. And she's in a same kind of situation, single parent household, and God provided every dollar. Like we said, and that's a big thing to say to someone. Listen, have faith. God's going to make a way. You don't want to say that, and then it's not going to
And then it
happen.
doesn't happen. Yeah.
That's not what faith is. Faith is
Yeah.
contrary to that. If in order to say that requires faith, you can't say it and not believe it is not faith. So being able
Well,
to
I
say,
think a lot of people get skewed, and this is a topic in and of itself about what faith is, right? Like,
yeah,
faith is being able to believe in the outcome even when the results aren't immediate, Because I think we also live in a world of instant gratification where people
right,
are expecting things to immediately happen to them because the external world has told them to believe that. DoorDash,
Mhm.
all these other things that are for convenience, right? So
I mean,
having faith is being able to continue to take daily action and take daily effort towards the goals and things that you want to achieve in your life. And even if the results aren't immediate, to persevere and keep going.
yeah, yeah. It's and those are things we get to see weekly in people. There's so many stories. Like there's a guy who's coming out now, young man. He's like young 30s. He's like 60 days clean, no drugs. Like that's a win. You know, that's someone. These are lives that could have went in the direction of overdose. And there's not a day when I see people like that. Like it's just it's personal to me. It's real. It's not just a who cares. These are real people, real lives, and you know, even in your tragedies of course that was a tragedy when I think of my sister Kristen, and yet it's the fire that fuels me. It's why I'm able to do what I do today. So God really does. He the messes that are in our life, they're not caused by God. God doesn't cause messes, but He's able to, and that's literally a Bible verse. It's Romans 8:28. The Bible says God is able to turn all things for good. That's what he does. He's a good God.
Well,
So
even
good
if you're
stuff.
experiencing something bad in your life, quote unquote, it can definitely be bad. Like things
Yeah.
are bad. There's no
Yep.
doubt because there is
And
good
we
and
can
there is
choose
evil.
for it. Yeah.
And I think that though sometimes those quote unquote bad things are put in your path because you might be asking for a certain outcome and God's going to deliver it to you. The
Oh yeah.
universe is going to deliver it to you. And it's going to put these obstacles in your way because you asked for something bigger. And when you ask for something bigger, you're going to have to learn. And in order to learn, you have to go through some obstacles and challenges. So I'm curious, Frank, what are some of the most unexpected lessons that you've had through this journey that have really like impacted you?
Yeah. So unexpected lessons would be like learning how to do this legally. Like that was probably one of the most annoying processes of my life. It's something, believe it or not, like I love the church stuff, but I had to become a business. When you start a church, it's not a business, but it still runs like a business. There's a business side to it. You cannot deny that. So having to learn, like if I say this out loud, it's like we are an Articles 9 church that started as an Articles 10, and we had to like I had to learn what an Articles 9 is, how to file correctly, how to do this, how to New York is so complicated, bro. And I found out you can go to another state and just start something. Here, it's almost done in a way that just it'll kill someone's dream. But I'm like, if I could figure it out, and I remember in the beginning being like, this just ain't me. You could do it. You will get it. It'll make sense. Those are like the things, those little hurdles I didn't expect, but I figured it out.
Yeah, it ends up
You
making
learn it.
sense, like you said.
Yeah, it just even if it doesn't make sense, the more you just familiarize yourself with the lingo and read up on it, the more you hear it, it takes time. It comes out. You will figure it out. So that was like one part of it. The other part of it is like finding space in Brooklyn is tough. Some people, like business owners, will say it's impossible, and it is a rough game out here. So if you want a small space, let's say it's 600 square feet, it's literally like just for an office space. We're talking 3,000 to 6,000 a month for that. If you want something bigger where you can house or put 30 to 40 people, we're talking $8,000 a month. So it's like it's tough to even find space that we could use. So the first space that we had, we started in our house, like in the Book of Acts. That's how the churches started. And I remember just saying, "All right, it's time to get out of here. We can't be having strangers in our house like this all the time. We gotta move." You know, my wife was like, "We need some privacy, Frank." I was like, "All right, let me look at some places." I started looking at some places, and I looked at my team, and I was like, "This is impossible. This is not happening." Like these numbers were crazy. But that week, we prayed, and God opened up a door for us for our first space for free, Ron, for free. COVID shut that down. Like that was so sad, whatever. We went through that COVID thing. Most churches did not come back after COVID in our area. They just did not come back strong. It was sad to see. Started looking up places because so many places closed down. There are places that were closed for the whole year. So I would reach out and say, "Hey, just can you give us the space for a better price? It's been closed." They said, "Nope, we're keeping it at like 9,000. We're not changing the prices." I was like, "Yep, guys, it's impossible again. We're gonna have to pray." We prayed and we got an even better space. That's the one that you see on the website. Like through those moments, faith, the Bible says faith is that belief in what's unseen. And you gotta believe. It's that's the one thing Jesus is amazed by. He was never amazed by someone's good works. He was never amazed by someone and what they can do. But when you read the Bible, Jesus was always amazed by that person who would just believe and have faith in who he was. He was amazed. The Bible literally says Jesus was amazed by that faith. And that's what God's looking for, faith. He wants to see who's willing to believe in him, who's willing to trust him, who's willing to put it all on the line for him. So gotta have faith.
Yeah, and also for him, which means that you're also doing it for yourself. Because am I right in saying that? And maybe I'm understanding it incorrectly, because it's like you have to be able to stand up for yourself at some point, and that does come through believing in, I feel, God, and a higher power, something above you that's going to help you say, like, don't worry, you got this. And that might not be immediately relevant to you. So, somebody that feels like they have a calling, and doesn't know where to start, let's just say, or they want to have more faith, what advice do you give to those people that are trying to find more faith, and they want to believe, but they feel this wall or barrier that keeps them from doing so?
I love that question because that's where we all are. That's where we all start. That's where I started. And it really came down to getting down and just you gotta like quiet all the voices in your head that you've heard that said this, that taught you this. You gotta quiet that stuff down. And for me, I would say you gotta get into this on your own. Like I would say if you want faith and you want to know, just open up to the book of John. That's the story of Jesus. Just see what it says for yourself. I think so many of us or so many people, we're just wired to like someone has to tell me or it has to be like handed to me. Like you said, that's kind of our culture. If I'm scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, I'll just wait for that video to teach me. Like we got to get out of that. If you really want to know, like that place I was in as an 11-year-old where I was just like, I gotta know what this says. The moment I opened it, Ron, it was like God spoke to me. And I'm telling you, whoever needs to hear it, the moment you open it and you see for yourself, God's gonna speak to you. And then prayer. So I just being at those moments in my life, I would go by an area. It's called Caesar's Bay in Brooklyn. Just being alone with your thoughts, being by the water, and just being able to pray. I remember being at that point, I was angry at God. I was like, God, I'm so mad at you. If you want to get me back, because I was this teenage kid, not living right. And I just remember, I know you called me, God. I know I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But if this is real, God, then you got to grab me and put me somewhere because I'm not doing it. He heard that prayer. Like that weekend, just there's the reason why there's stories is because I prayed. So if you want God to do something in your life, like you have to just think of your phone, like pick up the phone. You got to call him, call on him, start praying. You can't just sit and just expect something to happen. You need to call out on him. And that's another thing the Bible made known that I didn't know. It says if you call on the name of the Lord, you will be saved. Call on him, speak to him. Now, my thing, like, because I'm a Christian, like Jesus, seeing more teachings, like where Jesus says, I'm the only way. People ask him, they go to him, and everyone's got their thinking, but Jesus says the only way to the Father is through me. So like if someone's wanting him, there's a certain way that God wants to do it. I don't mean to make it like that on here, but like if I want to know his teachings, I gotta get into the book. I gotta see what he says about it. So just start praying, start reading it for yourself. You don't need someone. I said it last Sunday. You don't need me as your middleman. God has made it in a way where you can go to him. You don't need to come confess to me. You could literally go straight to the guy, and he's waiting for you. So I know that's for me when I started realizing that that was encouraging. I could go to him right now as I am. A lot of us, I hear it all the time around in Brooklyn. People are like, I can't go to church. The ceiling is going to fall on my head. The building is going to break down. I've done too much. Like
Well,
God
they're
does
like
not
making
want
a
me here.
joke about how bad they are.
Yeah, everybody, bro. Everybody does it. Like, oh, trust me, you don't want me coming there. I'm not that type of. That's the type of guy God is looking for.
Yeah, you
Um,
actually you need to go even more. Like,
like, and it's true. Like God is the Bible says that in Christ there's no more condemnation.
yeah,
Like God is not like, yeah, keep yourself away. He's like, no, come to me, because what I could do in your life is beyond anything you could imagine. So it's good. So
yeah,
go to
I
him, run for him.
Yeah, and I agree, Frank. As you know, knowing how I grew up and things like that, and I do obviously have people that listen of all different backgrounds and beliefs, and I respect all their backgrounds and beliefs
Yeah,
always. I think though the more important thing is that there's lessons to be learned about everything that we just talked about
yeah,
today,
yeah,
through God, and really, I think one of the most impactful things is having faith and being able to not still have faith when the results in your physical and 3D environment are not actually where you'd quote unquote like it to be. Having that sense of gratitude about what you already have and what's already inside of you, and then also if you want help from a higher power, God, Jesus, like you need to reach out and you need to take action in your life to move your life in the direction that you feel you want it to go in. And
yeah,
also a bit of trust your gut. Like you felt that inside of you and you said, I have to make the decision to leave
yeah,
the Department of Education, be a teacher, and do this and full time. And you had all the support in the world because of your faith, man. And
yeah,
I absolutely love that. So I'm just curious,
yeah,
Frank, as we wrap up, number one, like this has been for me, uh, some great reminders for my own life as well, because just like the audience, like I struggle at times with my own beliefs of like
yeah,
when
yeah,
certain
me
things
too.
around me
Me too.
aren't where I want them to be, and
Yeah,
feeling like why am I not there yet, and that
yeah,
happens, but then you have to go back to faith and you have to believe, regardless of what's around you. So thank you for that. And just as we close out, what's next for Lighthouse Church? I know you have, I believe, an upcoming building project. Is that true?
yeah. I hope that's our next goal. Like we need a space. Lighthouse needs a space in Brooklyn. To be its main spot. We want our own space. I think of the greater impact we could have. Like this is our location. This is the hub. This is where people can come. This is where you can get your resources. This is where people who are addicted can find a table, find family. It's hard to do that without a space. It's not impossible because that's what we've been doing. But we can have a want. That's our next project. So figuring that out, and that's another thing that could easily get in my face and say, "This is impossible. This is so much bigger than you. How are you going to learn this?" And that thinking of, "I'm going to learn it. We're going
Yeah,
to do it. It's
I'm
going
gonna
to come."
figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have
yeah,
a somebody in the business world that says FITFO, which literally stands for figure it the F out. Like, in the business world, like,
nice.
what do you mean? You want to start a business? You want to build a community? You want to make a course? Like, all right,
I
well,
love
go
that.
go figure it out,
Yep,
right? So
yep,
and when you do that and you have that mindset, those things will come to fruition. So I do believe
I
that
like that. Yeah,
that building's on its way already, Frank.
amen.
So that
Come on,
space is already there. So I'm
amen.
pumped for you. How
No
can
sitting
the
around.
audience support your vision? And then also, where can listeners learn more about Lighthouse Church and even connect with you personally, Frank?
Yeah, totally. I would love if anyone has any questions, everyone wants to talk, wants to know more, you could reach out to me on Instagram. My personal Instagram is just my name, Frank Lucenti with an underscore. You can look up the church, LHC Brooklyn. We had to use LHC Brooklyn because if you look up Lighthouse or Lighthouse Church, you will find at least another 1,000 Lighthouse churches all over the world. Because the name is just so common, you know what I mean? As it's way too common of a name. So when you just search up LHC Brooklyn on Instagram, you'll find us there. The website's lhcbrooklyn.org. If anyone wants to connect, that's what we're here for. We exist to connect people to God. That's our purpose. My vision is to help people encounter Jesus. So don't hesitate. That's why I'm here. People are like, oh, I don't mean to. No, you're not bothering me. This is why God put me here on this earth. So ask away, reach out. That would be awesome.
Frank, it's an honor, man. I mean, you're inspirational, bro. Like, and knowing
Nah,
you
you
as an
too,
adult,
bro.
like
You as
I
well,
had so
man.
much gratitude and so grateful to be able to do this with you. And I'm so excited for what we'll do together in the future, and
Absolutely.
hopefully seeing you soon too. What's one or two what's one last takeaway you'd want to leave with the audience as we close out here?
One takeaway: trust God. Trust Him. He's working. Whatever your dream is, because I like the name of this podcast, the Great American Underdog. You're starting at level 1. Just trust God. That's the hardest thing to do. It's not easy. Like surrendering and trusting is, I think, harder than doing the work. But just trust Him. He's bigger. He's better. He's got the resources. So trust Him.
I love that, Frank. Thank you so much for being here, man. Again, it's been truly an honor. And once again, to the audience, thank you for listening. This has been another incredible episode of Great American Underdog, where you can hear true stories of strength and success from real life underdogs. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Frank.
Anytime. Thank you.